What's good, friends? List episode 72 of the Game Pass Gamecast coming at you. The Xbox Series X and S are officially out in the wild, and the gaming world is getting in on the next-gen action. Well, except me, because my Series X came defective. So pour one out for your boy as he waits a few more days. Big old rip, RIP. But we still got a lot of Series X stuff to talk about, so I'll power through the next-gen pain, don't worry. While both consoles are seeing record sales, it seems like I'm not alone with the launch day issues with the Series X. With hardware defects now an issue at launch for the third consecutive console generation in a row for Microsoft, is this negative consistency potentially harming their faith with fans? And could the Series X's disk drive issues potentially even help the sales of the Series S? Plus, as we revel in the launch of next-gen, Phil Spencer highlights some dark days from the launch of the Xbox One in a new interview, even noting that Microsoft almost potentially exited the games industry as a whole. Could we one day see Microsoft leave the console wars to focus on software or subscriptions akin to that of Sega? Or will they always have a home in gamers' living rooms thanks to their deep pockets? Also, Codemasters, developers of the Dirt and Formula One racing franchises, have officially agreed to acquisition terms with Take-Two Interactive. Is this the right move for a development studio in a niche genre, outside of just the financial stability? All of this, and much more, on the newest jam-packed episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz, wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways like the one we have going on right now, where you can win a copy, free copy. You know, you don't have to fucking pay us or anything like that. We're just going to fucking give you a free copy of Cyberpunk 2077 when it drops in December.
There's no real obligations other than to follow a few specific directions and just be cool and win that game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you end up, like, you know, following us and probably subscribing to us at some point, so, you know, feels bad, man, on your end. I understand that, but, I mean, come on, it's a free game on us. No,
I mean, come on, we're giving you a $60 game.
Fucking work with us here.
Come on, man.
It reminds me of that Donkey video where he does that game, the comedy night game, and he, like, tells the joke, he's like, yeah, spaghetti and meatballs, and nobody says anything. He's like, laugh! Laugh! And then they're all like, oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. That's basically us, where we're like, please help us. Anyways, though, all of that aside, I'm your host, as always, Travis White, a.k.a. Traveless, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, I'm going to kick it off on my end. Usually I ask, what's good, what's going on, and what have you been playing? And I will ask you that in a second, but I want to start this show off this week. I mean, turn on the Tupac, and I'm talking like, you know, Life Goes On by Tupac. You know, I want everyone putting a lighter up, pouring a 40 out. I had so much planned for this week. We're like revolving around content for the show. It's the fucking release week of the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. We thought, and trust me, I'll get there. I had all this content planned around this week. Big fucking week in the world of video games, especially with our show. You know what? You know, and this is the thing too. And Mike, you know me, and I hope our audience knows me 72 episodes into this now, which thank you all for hanging around with that and putting up with our bullshit for 72 weeks. I'm a physical media guy still. You know, I'm Mr. like, you know, I like to go to, for example, today, it's Thursday, the launch of the PS5 is today. We're all hyped about that as well. I pre-ordered. I lucked out. I was able to get not only a pre-order online and whatever, but also got one in store. And I wanted to keep the one in store, so I knew I didn't have to worry about shipping getting messed up, whatever. I could walk in that day, fucking grab it, and go home and play it. Cool, right? Kept the one, another one for my cousin. Shout out to Robert. His actually did come from Amazon. It was all good, everything like that. But the Xbox Series X.
Oh boy.
I got caught in a work meeting, whatever. I was only able to secure a pre-order online, and it stuck. It was through Amazon, whatever, cool. And I was able to get another one too, but I canceled that once I knew I had one that stuck and it was for sure good. Perfect. Shipping actually said it's coming. Cool. Made sure, I was working from home on Tuesday. Amazon delivers it. Perfect. I have it works out perfectly that I, have my console on launch day. Great. Awesome. I open up the box. Literally, there's my Xbox in the box that, it's delivered in and whatnot, of course, with literally no packing inside. Just like fucking secure this thing. It's a $500 piece of technology and a box that is like 3 times the size of the actual Xbox, packaging itself. So it's bouncing around there. It's all dented up on the side. I'm like, oh, great. I'm sure, it's got to be fine, though. Whatever. They pack that thing in there good. And I actually did film an unboxing video for this console. I fucking did a full unboxing. I have all the footage and everything. So that may get released at one point. But what proceeded then threw me off a little bit. So I start up the console. Everything's good. I'm like, cool. This works out great. I started up. I started downloading some stuff from Game Pass because I'm like, I want to try comparing load times for different games to PC on a standard PC SSD. I want to try and see what these comparisons look like because I don't see a lot of people they're doing console comparisons, but not PC comparisons. Granted, PCs are much more modular and you're throwing in a zillion different parts and you could get a zillion different, parts of one specific part that you need. But you get what I'm saying. A standard SSD on a PC compared to what this custom SSD is in the Xbox Series X. Wanted to do that. Cool. Set up everything, ready to go. And I thought, you know what? No. I need to christen this console like I do every console. And that's with an Elder Scrolls game. Specifically, Oblivion. I grabbed one of my 6 fucking copies of Oblivion. I'm like, I want to see how, 1, this game loads, and 2, what I'm sure it's going to at least do 4K 60, if not, or whatever. It's going to upscale to 4K, and it's probably going to unlock at 260 frames per second. I'm sure. Alone, that's going to, it allows, I think it's just at this point a, ported version of the PC port, from what it seems like, from what I've looked at with the emulation of the original software. But I digress. Go to pop it in. It does not take a disc. I'm putting it in there. I'm like, oh. Okay, go ahead. And, normally when you put a disc in your Xbox or any video game console for that matter, once you start pushing it in, it grabs it from you and it sucks it in, or whatever, pulls it in for you or whatever and sets it in the drive and starts spinning. It was like something was in there already. And I'm like, well, clearly it's not. I literally just opened this fucking thing up 20 minutes ago. So I I'm hitting the button. It's making the sound, oh, nothing's in there. I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm digging around. I'm looking in there. I'm like, am I just a fucking idiot? Comments don't answer that. We already know the answer to that. But a bigger idiot than we already know or have established. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on with this thing? So finally, I'm like, maybe for some reason I need to update something because it's a 360 disc I'm trying to put in. I'll put an Xbox One disc in there. Grab MCC, try to do the same thing. Nothing. So my disk drive was broken day one. So pour one out for your boy. Luckily, the dope people.
$500 well spent, huh?
Yeah, $500 well spent. And granted, I've gotten consoles on launch days before. Not trying to think. The Switch was the only other one I really got on a launch day. I made sure I was able to get on a launch day. Most of them I'd gotten around launch, but the Switch was the first one I truly was like, I need to get a pre-order. This is going to sell out fast, yada, yada. But these past two, the PS5 and Xbox Series X, now that I'm like a full-time adult, I have money to actually try to get this stuff day one. But, so yeah, pour one out for my Xbox Series X. There was a ton of content I planned to do. That's obviously not happening, but shout out to Microsoft and our friends over there. They quickly were like, yep, you're obviously clearly because some people in the, I posted video of it and sent it to Xbox support, and it's got some traction. Polygon actually picked it up, put it in their article and whatnot, but but when putting it in and whatnot, like I said on there to a response, because we work with these people now, technically. Like we have a working relationship with Microsoft and people like trying to produce content around there. Like I look at them as, colleagues at this point, where I'm not going to go on there and be a 5-year-old fucking twat and be like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. Because bitching about things you can't control is fucking pointless. So I'm not going to waste my, mental space on that. So I'm going to, hey, Xbox support. No, you guys are super busy. Obviously, congrats on the launch. This is what's going on with my console. I think it might be defective. If not, maybe just let me know. Any help appreciated, smiley face, something like that. And somebody responded saying, like, it was good, like a good conversation. And I was like, oh, you know what? It's no harm, no foul. Like, I know what's going to happen. They're going to replace it. Like, it's not the end of the world. It sucks I'm not playing this day one, but I said that's
right.
I kind of made the point, like, that's the beauty of Xbox right now, that it's a platform, not a single console. I could play primarily 99% of the Xbox first party games on my PC. And, or on my phone or whatever. Like, plus I got the PS5 and stuff to come around, and we're adults at this point. Like, our backlogs are shameful. Like, I'll find something to play while waiting for this. But somebody came in and was like, no harm, no foul. They shipped you a defective thing. That's a foul. They can't even get their console right, blah, blah, blah. And I literally just wanted to respond, like, cry harder. I don't know what to tell you. Like, sorry, you're a broke bitch and you didn't get one. Like,
Yeah.
Like, and... I was like, well, I mean, it is no harm, no foul, because one, I can't control it, and two, they're clearly going to replace this thing. Like, it's a launch day, the console's brand new, they're going to fucking replace it. So, anyways, if you do happen to get a defective console, if something does happen, we're going to actually talk about that. It's one of our topics, or kind of folds into one of our topics that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. But if you do get that, remember that the people who are working on these are just that, people. Things are nothing in life is perfect. Things are going to happen. It is what it is. So to kind of cap that off, I'll just what I've been playing this week. I've gotten back into Destiny a little bit, or Destiny 2, that is, obviously. So gone back into Destiny a little bit, not much. I only played a couple of hours, but the Beyond Light expansion did come out, or the new content, big content drop for the next year, pretty much, did come out. I haven't bought it yet because I'm still behind on like Forsaken and Shadowkeep shit, and like because I just kind of started fully trying to get into Destiny over the summer, but I've been kind of going back and gearing up towards that. But seeing all the new content come out and the new hype around that, I wanted to at least get back in, and knowing that, hey, I'm not going to have enough time to actually sit down and invest in something between the launch of both the Xbox Series X and the PS5. Like, I'm going to play Miles all weekend on PS5 probably, and then obviously jump into, hopefully by that point, my new Xbox this year, jump into some shit on there and whatnot. But in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I definitely want to play that. But point being, like, I didn't want to invest in playing through another game whenever I'm probably not going to be able to complete it because I'm going to have a bunch of other shit to jump in. So been playing a bit of Destiny, jumping in and out of there. And then I tried to cap off my Fallout 4 playthrough. I wasn't able to actually get through 100% it. I ran out of time, but it still was one of those games, like I said, especially leading into its 5th anniversary. I think it still gets a bad rap. I really enjoy that game. I'm really excited to play it on next-gen consoles because it's going to do 4K HDR at 60 frames per second. So I'm excited to get back into that. Especially, too, they're saying that will all transfer with mods as well. So any high-res mods that fans are able to get both on console and, PC, obviously you could do that already, but on console too, anything like that, it's going to transfer and they're going to do 4K HDR 60 on it. So it's really great. I'd like to jump in there and do that. I'd like to do that with obviously all of Bethesda's, Bethesda Game Studios games, because like I always talk about, I'm a stan for them. So I really am excited to do that. But anyways, after that long-winded, Mike, catch us up on what you're playing, what's good, what's going on, and what have you been playing, my man?
I have had a lot less adventurous life recently, as 72 episodes in, everyone knows, oh, he's playing Halo, or he's doing this, or he's doing that. Yes, that's what I'm playing. But also, we started getting into Age of Empires 3 a little bit.
Mhm.
Obviously, I am out of town right now, recording from Virginia, so I'm away from my home setup. I brought it with me, but I just have worked some of the kinks out, so didn't really get to play too much online, but I've been playing more Counter-Strike, mixing in a little Rogue Company, mixing in Age of 3 Definitive Edition, because I am balls deep in the Squealing Hog that is remakes that Microsoft does for old games, clearly,
Mhm.
with Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 3. Outside of that, I am, pretty much just waiting. I wasn't someone who was we do have an Xbox show, and I do want a Series X at some point in time, but there was nothing really pushing me. Was kind of relying on you to get that console because you had two pre-orders, so we kind of were figuring you're going to get at least one, and you did. Obviously, it didn't work out, but I will eventually get a Series X, just not right away.
Mhm.
Just I have a lot of other monetary constraints right now that are kind of controlling what I need to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, outside of that, just kind of mixing in some other just minuscule games that aren't really that important, Among Us here and there, just different stuff. So
Mhm.
nothing too serious, just a lot of Age of Empires 3 recently.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, and I'm glad were able to get in and actually start to play that. You, me, Adam. I'd like to make that part of my rotation of games that aren't I don't want to call them live service games, but it is technically. I mean, it's a game that I'm going to jump in and I'm going to play, at least co-op multiplayer with you guys against, even if it's like comp bots and we just comp stomp.
Yeah.
It's still something I want to get in and play with you guys, but I'm probably not going to play on my own, but I probably would need to, just to kind of get back to learning the ropes and whatnot like that, but because I'm always
Age 3 is kind of cool too, because it's kind of a mixture between the hardcore experience you get from Age of Empires 2,
Mhm.
and it's like still a little streamlined. It's almost like what Skyrim is to the Elder Scrolls series. I would consider AoE 3 as to the Age of Empires series, because there are some hardcore elements, like hardcore RTS elements, that keep it true to form, but
Mhm.
there's also some streamlining that's done just to kind of make it a lot easier, that you don't have to micromanage every single villager. You can only have 99 max. You can't have like 140 like you could in Age of Empires 2. Like
Mhm.
there's just a lot of different things that make it a little easier, but not so much that it like makes it completely noob friendly. You know what I mean?
Oh
It's
yeah.
just a lot easier for you to probably like delve into that more so than Age 2 or something of the sort.
No, definitely. It really is. Even as somebody who's played, AOE 2 with you guys too, it's much more digestible. Jumping into 3, that is, comparative to AOE 2, where still enjoy my time with AOE 2, but AOE 3 is much more. I think, like you're saying, it is the Skyrim to the Elder Scrolls franchise, where it has the heart of everything you're doing, but obviously has some concessions whenever it's trying to appeal to a broader audience. It's trying to bring more
Mhm.
people into it and make it more accessible to a larger audience, which is good, is good and bad, I'm sure, on a lot of, to a lot of different people you'll talk to. But, for us, our group that we're playing, to me, I like that. And I like that it is going to be a little more accessible for me to jump in, who traditionally doesn't play a lot of RTSs like Fallout, Warcraft back in the day, playing 2 and 3. Yeah, I used to play those a lot. Never played them like competitively or anything, but I loved playing through those RTS titles and like had a
Right.
grip of those. StarCraft too, but it's moving into kind of this, the Microsoft end of RTSs, at least with AoE. That was kind of a blind spot for me. So having a game like that is very, I don't want to say casual friendly, but is open to newcomers. It is a good jumping in point for newcomers to RTSs in general, is really refreshing. Because it always seems to be a big hurdle to jump over on my end. But so I'm excited to keep playing a lot of that. That is another game that I've been playing too, but we obviously only got a night or two in on that. But I'm excited to keep playing that. But that being said, Mike, let's head into a button mash for this week. Let's go over the quick hitters in the news before we head into our big topics for the week. So, kicking it off finally, after After so many rumors and leaked retail listings, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition has finally been announced for spring 2021. Announced on announced on N7 Day, that is November 7th. Traditionally, it's a big Mass Effect celebration day, a day where BioWare and its fans celebrate all things Mass Effect. This remastered version of Mass Effect, Mass Effect 2, and Mass Effect 3 will be together in one collection for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. It would also feature, quote, forward compatibility and targeted enhancements on Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. Notice how they did not say, hey, it's optimized for Series X, like we're seeing, or optimized even for PlayStation 5 if you're, somebody who plays on Sony too. But they're also saying it's targeting enhancements for those. So basically they are saying, yeah, it has some optimization for Series X, but it doesn't. Like, it's a little bit of word salad, but it's them coming out saying, yeah, you may see some benefits, but it's not, it may not be obviously native 4K or whatever. We're going to do 4K upscaling, or you just may get an unlocked frame rate with it. Who the hell knows? But I digress. Following that up, something that I think a lot of people already expected, but it was nice to get confirmation, BioWare has confirmed that a new Mass Effect game is in fact in development. It's announced on N7 Day alongside the news of the long-awaited Mass Effect Legendary Edition, obviously like we were saying in 2021, but this new game will feature a, quote, veteran team from BioWare and will be the, quote, next chapter of the Mass Effect universe. While BioWare isn't sharing any more details about this project, it did share an image that gives a tease of the future of Mass Effect, so it's really cool. Go over on their Twitter, they have it posted over there. Really cool piece of like a mixture of that like concept art and actual like 3D rendering. Really cool. I really dig it. I'm somebody who wants to really have Mass Effect finally hook me with this new generation of Mass Effect, and I'm really excited to jump into the Mass Effect remastered trilogy just to get in there and go back. And it seems like it's going to be a trilogy, their remaster at least I should say, that provides some modernization to those entries comparative to, and I was on, I've talked about it before on the show. I went back and tried to play Mass Effect on current gen consoles through Game Pass and whatnot, and it is not good. It is very clunky. It's a good game, don't get me wrong, but like it needs a fresh coat of paint.
It's dated.
It is very dated. It feels very dated, and bringing new life into that is only going to help BioWare at this point because they need all the help they can get right now in the public face. Anyways, the upcoming Mortal Kombat movie, here you go, Mike, the reboot that they've been talking about has been delayed indefinitely, according to its producer. It will not be released until theaters have reopened nationwide. Mortal Kombat was originally scheduled to launch in March of 2021. That's fucking soon. As spotted by Game Informer, Mortal Kombat's producer Todd Garner answered a fan question on Twitter regarding the possibility of new information about the reboot, and obviously said that it will not be released until theaters open nationwide. Cyberpunk 2077 developer CD Projekt Red has responded to rumors that another delay for its hotly anticipated RPG could happen, possibly pushing the title into 2021. Rather than deny the rumors, the developer reaffirmed its new December 10th release date. Quote, as a rule, we don't comment on rumors or speculation, a CD Projekt Red representative told IGN in a response to a request for comment on the latest delay rumors. Quote, but I will confirm we were just taking time to update all of our assets to reflect the new launch date of December 10th. So, knock on wood, fingers crossed, and one of you guys hopefully on December 10th will be playing that game on our dime. So, knock on as much wood as possible. A Call of Duty Warzone patch has brought a beta version of private matches to the game, added options for high-res textures, and shrunken the game's initial file size by 25 gigabytes. A November 9th patch for Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Warzone has been detailed on the Infinity Ward blog, which notes that the developer has added 3 beta private Warzone modes to the game. A standard battle royale, plunder, and a mini BR, which requires 24 players. Fans of All Elite Wrestling AEW have reason to celebrate as there are multiple AEW games in development. As reported by Heel by Nature, AEW's Tony Khan confirmed that an AEW console game is in the works alongside another that will let players take the role of a general manager. Quote, "We're making multiple games. We're working on more than one game," Khan stated. We're going to cater to different platforms. We're going to cater to different kinds of games and different interests. We'll put out a title that's a console game that is best in class. We're really excited about it. There's some big surprises to come in 2020. I just can't say that enough. There's still time in 2020. The Rock, Dwayne, man, announced the news on Twitter and shared a video explaining how he, Microsoft, and Gamers Outreach will be gifting 20 children's hospitals one-of-a-kind Rock Xbox Series X consoles that will allow 50,000 plus kids to experience the next generation of gaming. As detailed on Xbox Wire, these consoles will be put in specialized Gamers Outreach carts, known as go-karts, that are, quote, portable kiosks built to easily provide recreation to children who are unable to leave their rooms in hospitals. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers will be able to activate a free 30-day trial of Disney Plus. As announced on Xbox Wire, this trial will be able to be activated through the Perks Gallery on an Xbox console, Xbox app on Windows 10 PC, or through the Xbox Game Pass mobile app on iOS and Android. Once activated, users will be taken to the Disney Plus site to activate their subscription. This offer will only be available until January 31st, 2021, and will be able to be redeemed anytime before March 2nd, 2021. Furthermore, though, it is only available to new Disney Plus subscribers, and the trial will renew at $6.99 a month until you cancel. Halo 4 will launch on PC as part of the Master Chief Collection with a fully remastered campaign on November 17th. A trailer titled Wake Up John just dropped over on the Halo YouTube channel, which you can check out over on IGN. They have an actual full video of it as well. You can also go to YouTube. It's all on there. This edition will complete the Master Chief Collection on PC, which will then offer every game in the mainline series aside from Halo 5 Guardians. The description for the trailer on YouTube reads, quote, "Now optimized for PC, experience the fully remastered campaign to embark against new foes, dust off some orbital drops in Spartan Ops, or dive right back into the multiplayer." After previously confirming that the next Battlefield game would be released in 2021, EA has revealed it is set to arrive in holiday 2021, and it is said to deliver, quote, "on a true next-gen vision for the franchise." Speaking during EA's November 2020 earnings call, CEO Andrew Wilson stated that, quote, "DICE is creating our next Battlefield game with never-before-seen scale. The technical advancements of the new consoles are allowing the team to deliver a true next-gen vision for the game. We have hands-on testing underway internally, and the team's been getting very positive feedback on the game as we've begun to engage our community. The next Battlefield is set to launch in holiday 2021, and we're excited to share a lot more about the game in the spring." So, Mike, that's going to do it for Button Mash this week. Anything you want to run back before we move into our big topics for this week?
The CD Projekt Red news, I don't want to say I told you so, but that game's not coming out on time again. And The Rock coming out with, I thought that was a really touching video. If you guys haven't had a chance to check that out on Twitter, please do so. Gamers Outreach is a very good organization that usually runs a LAN tournament in Michigan every year. Gamers for Giving is one of the the event in Michigan that a lot of the proceeds go to this Gamers Outreach. And basically in children's hospitals, I don't know if anyone has ever spent a time in a children's hospital. I did when I had my tonsils removed. There's terminally ill children that are there. There's kids like me who just have a unique case of how big their tonsils are, and they have to get them removed by some of the best doctors in the world through University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, like I did, and had Pitt students that were going to be doctors and stuff kind of sit in on it. Very interesting and scary time, but also awesome. And my time at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh was pretty amazing. The menu that you can have there is kind of what you would imagine for kids. And back then I got to play in a video game section that was pretty, it was confined to a room, clearly, because I was, this was a long time ago now because I'm old, but it's really cool now that they make these carts that they can just wheel them to the children's room and you have your systems right there, and the kids can play whatever game they want right on that system. And it's a really big deal that The Rock was willing to donate what he was, and the special edition just looks so cool. So that's awesome for him, and he's a great person, always has been. And Mass Effect getting the remaster treatment is a big deal because me and Marshy are friends of N7, specifically with Mass Effect. The first game I thought's a masterpiece. It's one of the best games, RPG games I've ever played in my entire life. But I can understand why, because we have tried to play it recently, that it's dated. It's kind of clunky. It feels really weird compared to games that are out now. And I know that's kind of strange because we'll pump the tires on Oblivion all day, and there's people that I know that are huge fans of Skyrim that can't play Oblivion because they feel it's dated. So it's a different feel of dated. Now, I'm not ignorant, and I'm not, too proud to admit that, if someone feels Oblivion's dated, I'm not going to tell you you're an idiot or tell you you're wrong. But I mean, Mass Effect is absolutely dated, and it feels really tough to play. So I think that's a big deal, especially with them coming out with a new game. I think it's worthwhile for them to spend time and money on remastering those games because, in all honesty, if they really want to get people interested in Mass Effect again, you have to give them those original experiences in a way that they can digest, because there's a large, fan base that love the older version or love the older Mass Effect games, but they don't want to play Andromeda because it's really bad or something of that nature. You know what I mean? And this kind of gives them a chance to digest their classic games that they want to play, and it gives new fans a chance to get into those old games, building up to what comes out next. So really excited for them to get that going. And obviously Mortal Kombat movie getting delayed, obviously that's a bummer, but it kind of makes sense. But what it tells me is that the movie's pretty much finished, but they're waiting for more revenue streams to come in from theaters being fully open, which is cool because it means that they're not super pinched to make money off of it, which is really cool, which kind of gives me hope for the movie to be good if they're not just like trying to do a money grab, which delaying it kind of tells me that they're not really interested in forcing this movie out so they can get money from it. So that's really cool. That's probably the only things that I really care to touch on. Going forward. Halo 4, whoop-de-doo, fart noises, whatever you want to do, like that's cool, awesome, thanks dude. Like obviously I'm excited for everyone who's fans of the campaign mode because I do like Halo 4's campaign, but that's about all the further that Halo 4 can be taken seriously for. So that's about it for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. Pretty much that you said. I'm curious though, and this is I promise we'll wrap up Button Mash, one of the big topics this week, but it's interesting too. The biggest thing that I keep thinking about with the Mass Effect news, not just the remaster trilogy or whatnot, but more so the new game in development, which sounds to me, at least, when I think there's a reason why BioWare came out and said, hey, this is a veteran team working on this next chapter of Mass Effect, or however they want to spin it, but they focused on the phrase veteran team. That team who's working on it is definitely going to be BioWare Edmonton, because BioWare Austin right now was transferred, Anthem was transferred over to BioWare Austin, sorry. Now who is completely overseeing that studio now is the Anthem studio. They're working on doing the rebirth of Anthem, basically rebooting the game or whatever, pretty much doing a No Man's Sky Beyond type scenario with it. But what that is interesting to me is that, a lot of people are super jazzed about this. And I am too. Like, I think I still have full faith in BioWare. Yes, they've taken some lumps over the past 2 entries that they had, but their core remains very, very much now back intact, especially with Casey Hudson coming back into the fold and, having the heart of the Mass Effect series right there. The only thing is, though, I think people are looking over now that this veteran team is probably going to closely align with the Anthem team, who made Anthem, who were the main team that was assigned to Anthem, is probably the people working on this game. So, not that I'm saying, I'm not trying to dunk on Anthem by any means, but I want people to be just aware of this and kind of focus in on that and know that, okay, these are the people who are handling the development of this game moving forward. Now, granted, like I said, Casey Hudson, who was the project lead on the original Mass Effect game, like, there's so many veteran voices in there that you're hoping that, okay, almost like a Joseph Staten move where with Halo Infinite coming in to direct and steer the ship, obviously at a much earlier standpoint than Halo Infinite, but, you know, hopefully...
Oh, God, why?
Well, hopefully, you just hope that it is much more... You hope that this just is going to be a stable entry. This is going to be an entry that... I'm all for creative freedom. I'm all for I'm totally cool with developers changing some things up to a degree on their, you know, all games need to have, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's finding that balance of both, you know, evolution, but also the heart of your series. And that's what I think, you know, 343 struggled with for so long and still does to a degree now, and even so, maybe even more now, that they have this identity crisis with they want Halo to be their own, but they are treading too far away from it's good to evolve the product, but you can't evolve it too much where you're leaving what made the product so great behind to a degree. And I think that's where, you know, almost BioWare got a little bit with Andromeda from what it sounded like. I didn't play Andromeda because it came out when I was in college still, and I didn't have a ton of money to go and spend on all the games. And if I saw a game review bad, I just wasn't going to get it right then. But I digress, saying that, you know, I want them to take a little bit of a safer bet. And I'm hoping that we get a better feel of how... where their allegiance is with Mass Effect long term when we see this the Legacy Edition or the Legendary Edition of the Mass Effect trilogy. I'm hoping we have a better idea of like, okay, this is how a 2021, this is how a modern Mass Effect game feels right now, or at least these, you know, we could see some modernization to Mass Effect that will hopefully evolve leading forward too. And plus, we also have the new Dragon Age game that's coming out, so, you know, between those two titles alone, you know, BioWare Edmonton is going to be very busy. And, you know, how much crossover we're going to see with those two titles. You know, we're fully not going to see this Mass Effect title for at least 4 or 5 years, I would imagine. When do we see Dragon Age 2? Whenever, you know, where does that come in? Does that disrupt Mass Effect? There's a lot of questions with it, but I did want to bring up the whole, you know, perspective on, hey, this is probably the Anthem team who's doing this. No knocking against them. There's still a ton of talented people there. That game just didn't, it just didn't click. It wasn't ready to launch. It launched in a bad state. It was pushed out, and probably so, more so on EA's end, on the publishing end, but you never know. So I just want people to be aware of that moving forward. But I digress. Mike, into our big topics for this week. And the first one I kind of want to bring up, since it's obviously the launch week of the Xbox Series X and S, obviously, but kind of the highs and lows. And like I said, I already talked on some of my lows, and that'll obviously come into play here a little bit. But, you know, kicking off, I just want to really kind of focus in on how this launch went for the most part, because there are a lot of positives and there's also some negatives with it too. But I like to almost get the shot first. You know, I want to get the shot in the arm first and be done whenever you go to the doctors type of thing. So let's do the bad news first. Let's get that done with. And it's, unfortunately, pour one out close to my heart. The Xbox Series X seems to have a disc problem. This write-up comes from Patricia Hernandez via Polygon, as always, link in the description. Let's see what she has to say. It's console launch week, which means there are many fans now opening and starting up their new hardware. While for the most part, the Xbox Series X debut seems to be going well, now that Xbox Live is back online, because there were a little bit of struggles with that. Some people were thinking, oh shit, my Xbox is bricked. They couldn't get past the startup to like set up the console. It just kept giving them like the swirling, loading thing, and it was because Xbox Live was down and nobody knew. But now they're back online. things seem to be going pretty well, but some fans are reporting issues with their disk drives, me being one. Videos floating around on the internet show that the Xbox Series X whirring sound, or whirring loudly, or making strange clicking sounds after accepting a disk. That is, if the console accepts the disk at all. Some videos, like mine that they shared, show the Xbox Series X having trouble with game insertion. Some players report that things improve if they try putting their console horizontally or vertically. One thread on Reddit has players saying they're brute forcing their games into the console. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Bold strategy.
That is bold strategy, Con. Let's see how it pays off. I'm not, though, personally. I'm just going to fucking send it back and get a new one. Others, meanwhile, say that they only hear loud sounds from the Xbox Series X while installing games, though nothing on the level of the videos we've seen. Microsoft hasn't acknowledged the disk issue specifically, but it's encouraging users to check out their devices and troubleshoot problems via the official page. So, yeah, they don't want to really talk about it, unfortunately, which is sad. And I don't like, they need to be a little more transparent with that, but I digress. Mike, on a much...
The Xbox One had the exact same problem.
Yeah.
My biggest issue, I know, you're still going through talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest issue with it is, it's great that they're honoring their warranty and they're taking care of customers, but the Xbox One had the exact same issue. Except for it would accept the disc, it just wouldn't read it.
Yeah.
So your Xbox One console has the exact same problem. Now your Xbox Series X console won't even accept the disc. So it's basically a similar issue.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that happens, but continue on with the story.
We'll dig into that in a minute. Put a pin in that because we're gonna dive into it. I really wanna wanna tear that open in a minute. So hang on to that animosity for a second. But let's look at a little more positive light and a good thing here. The Xbox Series X and S was the biggest Xbox launch ever. This comes from Tom Phillips over on Eurogamer, as always, link in the description. Microsoft has trumpeted the release of the Xbox Series X and S as its biggest Xbox launch ever, though not providing any specific sales figures. Xbox boss Phil Spencer broke the news on Twitter today, noting that, quote, more Xbox consoles had been sold in more countries than ever before, and that many more were on the way. The Xbox Series X and S are sold out in many places, making this, like many console launches, simply a matter of how many console boxes Microsoft can inject into retailers to sell on launch day. The mention of more countries this time around also is important. The Xbox Series S and X arrived on the same day in 37 markets compared to just 13 for the Xbox One. Still, as video game analyst Daniel Ahmad points out, any total now the largest ever for Xbox means it was higher than the 1 million units Microsoft managed at the Xbox One's launch, which is no mean feat in the middle of a pandemic. Microsoft has not published console numbers for years. It says because its own metrics for success are tied to users across PC, console, mobile, and the cloud, and not because PlayStation is ahead. Don't expect sales numbers anytime soon in the future either, even if Xbox overtakes PlayStation this generation. Quote, I can promise you that I won't do that, Spencer told The Guardian just yesterday. In the last year, we've had Google and Amazon and now Facebook announcing they're coming into our gaming space. I'm not going to go compete with their numbers based on how many Xbox Series X's I've sold. Google is never going to talk about how many Chromecast Pros they've sold. They're going to talk about how many players they have. I think the people who want to pit us against Sony based on who sold the most consoles lose the context of what gaming is about today. There are 3 billion people who play games on the planet, but maybe only 200 million households that have a video game console. In a way, the console space is becoming a smaller and smaller percentage of the overall gaming pie. So, Mike, like you were getting into, listen. And kind of what I talked about at the top of the show. We're all adults here, man. I mean, granted, maybe, man children playing video games here, maybe. But I like this. But still, half of that description implies that we're adults of some, caliber or whatever. But I digress. It's new tech on the day it launches. Issues are bound to happen, no matter what the tech is. Not just video game consoles, phones, TVs, whatever. Like, it's going to happen. And fun fact, nothing in life is fucking perfect, and nothing is ever going to be perfect. Sorry, it ain't happening. If you're having that mindset, you've been wired wrong in terms of how to logically think about these things.
Yeah, and the sooner you come to terms with that, the easier your life is going to be, I promise.
And that's just, I think, growing up and, the older you get, you kind of accept that shit. You would hope, knock on wood, but Anyways, though, talking as somebody who received mine at launch and had to send it back and get a new one, I know that I run a super small risk of that happening as an early adopter. Granted, I run an Xbox show, and now this is kind of quote unquote work. I need it for work, technically, which is nice to think about in a weird way. So I need to cover it and whatnot. So I want to have it so I can do all that. So of course I'm going to adopt it early, but I know I take that risk. Yet this has now been 3 launches in a row where Microsoft has faced known issues with their console at launch. The red ring of death with 360, the laser that reads the discs, and the Xbox One disk drive being non-responsive, which I suffered on my pretty much launch Xbox One. I think I bought it like a month after it launched or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Had the same issue. Had to take it back the next day. It is what it is. And now complete drive failures with the Series X. So, Mike, while it's absolutely stellar, obviously, to see Microsoft find commercial success with both systems at launch, with more people than ever gaming and having faith in the products that Microsoft are putting out at launch, which is absolutely awesome, could the now 3-generation trend of hardware failures at launch actually impact the reputation of Microsoft from a hardware manufacturing standpoint, of them being this player on the hardware end, like looking at now saying, well, yeah, I mean, I really want to get it on Xbox, but I'm not doing it at launch. The shit's going to be broke. Like, it's not going to be, great. And, obviously, like I said, being mainly with drives, could this also, in a weird way, have a positive impact on sales with the Xbox Series S being all digital moving forward?
Yeah, I think, when you're inspecting this, I mean, like, we've said before, we now technically have media jobs with Microsoft, but through 72 episodes, if there's one thing I'm going to be with people, it's going to be straight up and honest. And it's not necessarily because I love to bash Microsoft, because I have given them their fair, kudos when they've earned it. And I've also shredded them when they've deserved it. And this is a point that I feel like they deserve a bit of shredding, because realistically speaking, not only is it $500, but one of the reasons why I wasn't in a hurry to buy the consoles is because I kind of figured that, things were going to be fucked up on release day. And that's kind of sad because, like you said, it's happened multiple times. I had an Xbox Red Ring, 3-4 times. And then,
you notoriously with that goddamn red ring. I mean, I only had it once, but I remember you at like relatively close to launch, and then just you would get it in like a week later it red ringed. Like, what the fuck?
And, I knew what they were doing because you read online and you do your own research and you see what part they're going to fix and you know what's going to happen. It's just going to red ring again because I play it a lot. And I told them that the first time I called in. I said, hey, I know you guys are having this issue. I know this is what the problem is. I'm telling you right now, if you just do a repair job, it's going to happen again. And they're like, well, that's what we have to do. So it took them 3 times of repairs, which, by the way, back then was like 2-week process to send your Xbox back, get it repaired, and get it back. So for 6 weeks, I'm without an Xbox, and that's how long it took them to finally replace it. Now, of course, I never had that happen again once I had the replacement, thank God. But the fact that that's how long it took is kind of, crazy to me. And yeah, I think that with all of this, with the Xbox One issues that you and my brother both had with this Xbox Series X, I think that, it's a trend at this point, and it's a concerning trend that this is just normal everyday life for Microsoft. And when they release a new console, it's just going to be shit and break. And or even not even break, but be broken upon receiving. And that's, kind of sad for the people that are early adopters. So, that is concerning to me. And I do think, Microsoft deserves a little bit of ribbing for it because, hey, like, you're all about the consumer, but you're constantly giving them broken shit and making them wait weeks to get a good one. Like, what is up with that? Why don't you just send good ones on the release? Right. Obviously there's going to be consoles that are broken, on release day, things are going to go wrong, but it's at an alarming rate that I know people directly with both consoles, the Xbox One and this Series X, that have had things wrong with it. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's concerning to me that I know people
the guy you're talking to right now.
Yeah, it's not even like it's I read online. It's no, I know people that have had issues. You know what I mean? So it makes it a lot more real in that case.
No, 100%. And it's obviously, like you said, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But the thing with it is, it doesn't just seem to be a small margin, like a small margin.
Yeah, it's not an isolated case.
No, which are still going to happen. It seems to be like every launch there is something that isn't, like, it is staggering wrong that, still is a smaller majority. It's the majority of consoles that are out there. I don't want to say vast majority, but, we're talking, it's probably 90% of consoles are good or whatnot, but 10% of consoles, that's a lot of consoles that are coming out that, you do wonder, like, how does this pass, the, what's the term I'm looking for? The
quality control.
Quality control, that's it, thank you. How does, at that rate, pass it, you think, okay, yeah, we're good. Like, is this an actual, did they have to pivot, and when they started manufacturing these, was this at the time where, okay, we were going to go with one, retailer to get, to manufacture whatever in our hard drives or whatever, but because of COVID now, they're not going to be able to get it to us, or the price has gone up astronomically, we have to go with this other one. And, sure, they run the risk of not being as compatible with the other parts we're putting into this disk drive. Did you hear that?
No,
My fucking my Google Home thing, my little like Google Dot or whatever you want to call it, literally it's just like, I'm sorry. It scared the shit out of me. Like, who the fuck is, like, it sounded like something like was like overtaking my room. It was like, I'm sorry, I don't have updated info on coronavirus. I gotta unplug that because that's gonna scare the shit out of me. Anyways, back to whatever I was saying before. I thought I was being robbed. But yeah, so you got to wonder, like, how are we starting to see some, issue? Like, granted, you hope these are small scale, but it seems to be every Microsoft launch, there is some through line of, some kind of defect. It seems to be a narrative always around their consoles outside of, I don't remember anything with the original Xbox, but at the same time, when that launched in 2001, I was fucking, 8? Like,
you could run that thing over with a car and it was fine.
Right. And it's understandable because they're trying to make tech, especially with the Xbox Series X, which I am shocked how small that thing is. And two, how fucking quiet I did not think it was on at one point. Like, I turned off, shut down my PC, and actually covered up, like, our vent for our air conditioning or, like, our heating cooling system to try to hear it, and I had to, like, shove my ear right up to the vent to hear it actually go. Like, it is literally whisper quiet. So I am very impressed on that end. But with all of that and the downsizing that comes into compacting that and the compression of all of those parts, something may go wrong. But I think, like, I just wonder if, I'm really curious to see how the launch for the PS5 goes today. Like, tomorrow rolls around, I want to see how many people open up their PS5 and, hey, is the SSD shit out? Was there a memory issue or something like that? Like, because then, to me, then that starts to put an emphasis on, okay, these console manufacturers had to pivot at one point with production, with COVID, and had to go different directions, and this is a result of that. Like, I would feel safe, not completely assuming that, because you're taught to never assume, but I feel like there would be a case to make for that assumption, at least. So I'm really curious to see where this goes with both of these consoles. Obviously, nowhere near as bad as the Xbox 360 with the red ring. And they have improved. You saw much less people with the disk drive issues with the Xbox One compared to the red ring of death with the 360, which is great. But, even then, it seems like it's a smaller percentage this time around. And granted, too, we also have to think, the longer these or the more we go through with these console generations, we also have to think of the impact of social media, that we are in an echo chamber at times where everything is amplified. Everybody has a soapbox they can stand on. Everybody has a platform that they can use that, sure, before that was shoved into a forum somewhere in 2006, where, yeah, in 2013, we started to see the impact of Twitter and things like that, and it did become more relevant. But in 2020, I mean, for fuck's sakes, that's how we got any information from our former president. Well, that also feels pretty good saying. Knock on wood.
Well, he's still our president, but...
knock on as much wood as possible. You get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
About to be former president, where we're not getting all our information from a fucking tweet. So point being, though, we're seeing that trend that way that, oh, what if this happened, in 2013? Would it have that big of a story around it, considering, the amplification of what goes on in our lives isn't there? Everyone doesn't have that soapbox. So it's really going to be interesting to see where this goes moving forward and how both of these consoles, I think both kind of rely on each other. I haven't heard any negative things about the Series S in that manner. Granted, I'd love to, please send me them, in the comments or whatever, or even over on our Twitter. Like, I haven't seen anything with the Series S because obviously it's all digital, but I haven't heard of any, graphical, really any graphical issues or anything like that. No, malfunction CPUs or, anything on that end. It's been with these disk drives. And I'm curious to see if, maybe, like I said, I even don't think next generation is going to be, I think we're still going to have disk drives next generation. But with how all of this stacks up now and the issues that we're seeing and the amount of, transition to digital only consoles and games, what does that look like? What does, does this impact that, saying, actually, fuck it, we're only making a few of the disc ones because people are mainly buying digital and the discs keep fucking up, or disc drives keep fucking up. So it's really going to be an interesting when the dust settles from both these console launches, what stuck out, and are there any through lines with both of these? Because I really think we're going to see the impact that this pandemic has caused, this worldwide pandemic. And hopefully, it is more aligned on that case. But anyways, Mike, let's move on to our next one here. Phil Spencer says Microsoft almost abandoned the Xbox brand after the launch of the Xbox One, supposedly. This comes from Kyle Orland over on Ars Technica. As always, link in the description. And this is kind of chopped together a little bit. It's a really, really great interview that they pulled from. Go over there, check out the interview, read through it fully if I could talk. But I want to chop it up just for time's sake and whatnot. That kind of fits into the points we want to talk about, but I digress. With just months to go before the launch, when Don Matrick left, control of the Xbox brand was splintered across 3 teams. A platform team headed by Mark Whitten, a first-party team led by Phil Spencer in, quote, another part of the company, and a separate marketing team that has been moved out, quote, from the rest of the Xbox planning. Quote, I don't think it was the best move for stability of our launch, Phil Spencer recalled. While the splintered team managed to launch the Xbox One mostly on time, in parentheses, that holiday season, as Spencer put it, the lack of leadership meant that there was, quote, some of the parts of the platform that weren't completely done when we launched. Forward Xbox executives have previously reflected on the problems during the pre-launch period for the Xbox One as well, especially the rollout and subsequent reversals of digital licensing policies that would have let game publishers restrict use sales of physical game discs. Quote, certainly our messaging was horrible, former Microsoft Director of Product Planning Alberto Pinello told Ars Technica in an interview at the time. While the intent was good, we did not deliver what our fans wanted. Former Microsoft Corporate Vice President for Windows and Devices, Youssef Mehdi, said in a LinkedIn post years later. By early 2014, a few months after the launch of the Xbox One, Mark Whitten had left for Sonos, and Spencer was the one left to pitch the value of the gaming division to the newly named Microsoft CDO, Satya Nadella. Quote, then the question is, do we go forward with Xbox? Phil Spencer said. Quote, because we're getting really outsold by PlayStation in the market at this point. Do we stay invested in it, or do we make a different decision? While Spencer said he knew he was going to stay in the games business, at the time he thought it was far from clear if there would be a space for him to do so at Microsoft. I think the question was, is the company going to stay in this space, he said. And then, if so, what's my role? Spencer said at the time, Nadella, quote, didn't quite understand the gaming division yet, not from an intelligence standpoint, but he hadn't been so close to it yet. Still, Nadella decided to leave the gaming division, decided to give the gaming division his continuing support, letting Spencer head up a reunified Xbox team. Quote, I think the reason I ended up in the job, frankly, was that the other leaders were gone, he said. I tease myself that I was the last person left at the table, and there's some truth to that. I want to make sure I keep my ego in check. So I think we all kind of knew how splintered and on edge Xbox was, both leading into the launch of the Xbox One as well as right after it too. And I think that's, I wanted to make sure I got this kind of article in here to talk about, or this talking point in there, since we're going into yet another Xbox generation that is completely, for the most part, a 180 from how it was looking previously heading into this generation, where it is now a much more positive note. But to see how potentially close Microsoft was to, distancing themselves from the Xbox brand, hell, even their gaming division in general, is pretty eye-opening. To me, this is just another shining example of how integral Phil Spencer has been to the resurgence of the Xbox brand, building the whole ecosystem around the players themselves and really surrounding himself with just ridiculously talented individuals, both internally, externally, on marketing, on publishing, you name it. Putting the right people in the right places around him too helps. So, Mike, do you feel getting out of at least the hardware business was ever on the table for Microsoft, pulling a move akin to Sega, focusing on software primarily and, doing away with their consoles? Or do you think that was just never a thought? Do you think, with how deep Microsoft's pockets are, that they will always remain a player in the console wars as long as they really want to, I guess?
I think when you're kind of digging into this topic, you have to consider the fact that, that while Microsoft has deep pockets, there's a reason why they have those deep pockets. Mm-hmm. And if something isn't going to pay money, like if something isn't going to be worth their time or their while, they're going to go in another direction, because they are a business at the end of the day. And there isn't a sense of pride there that, like, oh, we're going to suck it up and we're going to continue to compete because we just want to prove that we're the best at this or that, that a smaller company might have. So that's part of it. To me, I do think that there could have been a serious potential, or there was serious potential that they could have exited hardware altogether and just threw in the towel and said, you know what, we can do everything that we want to do gaming wise right off of a PC. Why even bother? Or, why even bother with the headache that is releasing consoles? And, that's something that when you look at how the Xbox One was released, how little, there were really no games for it, what the system turned out to be, it makes sense that all of these things were kind of a perfect shitstorm for an underwhelming release. And you would think that they would have taken notes from that previous failure and said, maybe we shouldn't repeat that. But alas, we still have 343 Studios, which it seems like they're finally beginning to right the ship. But it's almost like, they made the same mistake with the hardware at the release of the Xbox One, and then they're allowing 343 to make the same mistakes that they have already made, which is really frightening and terrifying. But I digress. I will say that, it's not a far-fetched idea that they could have just completely thrown in the towel on hardware and said, screw it, we're just going to go a different direction, because, they sometimes it feels like they, left something to be desired with the Xbox One, especially with the, release version of it. So hats off to them for keeping their nose to the grind and, eventually releasing something to be proud of. But it, it does feel like they, kind of botched the initial release of the entire system.
No, and that kind of really is amplified reading through this. Like, and I remember looking back on it, like, I naturally was going to go to the Xbox One at launch. I had played primarily on the 360. I had a PS3, but that was much later in the generation because it was fucking insanely expensive when it launched. But, and I was kind of, it's been almost like flip-flopped for me. It seems like each generation where, I started the PS2 Xbox generation with a PS2. Then as we got, halfway through, probably around like, I don't know, what was that, 2004, 5 or something like right around Halo 2, got an Xbox that for Christmas one year. and primarily played on that and naturally transferred to the 360 because it was heavily playing it at the time. Kind of the same way went in from the 360 to the Xbox One because I was primarily heavily playing that, but I also got a PS3 later on in that and was tied to a lot of PlayStation games again, and naturally went and got a PS4, and that's, to be honest, been my primary console gaming machine this generation. And I see myself trending the opposite direction again too. Like, I think, granted, I think this console generation, and that's no, I've always loved them equally, all my consoles, and each generation that I play. It's just, some are set up better than others for success, obviously. Like being, a gamer, you have more accessibility options on one or whatnot, and more people are playing on one, so you jump in there. But hopefully with crossplay, that's all, changing all that. But point being, like, I see you really, even then, like, I wasn't as, like, I knew that the PS4 had a ton of momentum going into its launch because of all the things they were saying, but I still kind of looked at it as, you know what, I believe in Microsoft. They've done so well last generation, and thinking, like, this is going to be a safe bet to buy. Like, I was like, this is going to be a safe console to buy. And even, like, rolling into, like, 2015, I was still thinking, you know what, they're going to come along. I'm still playing a ton of great, third-party stuff on here, too. Hopefully, Halo 5's good at that time, and, a lot of things that were coming that I think a lot of people were hopeful for. Some delivered, some didn't, but, eventually saying, like, okay, I'm moving to a PlayStation 4 because you saw the writing on the wall. But I continue to say, and one of the things that really drove me to start the show, I should say, but me to bring up, centering around this show being Xbox, oriented, was because I saw the writing on the wall this time, not in a bad way for PlayStation, but that both were going to find equal success. Or both.
Xbox or Microsoft wanted to take the gloves off.
Right, and they doubled down on, we're doubling down on gaming. We're going to change our messaging, but we're not leaving gaming, because this would have been the generation that they left, hands down. If they wouldn't have had somebody like Phil Spencer who was going to go to the mat for what Microsoft does and help them mold what they want or what he saw this to be. And I'm not saying it's fully on him, but he is such an integral piece of moving this forward and putting the right people in the right places to help him push that brand and build this. Because it's been a long climb. I mean, really, I would say, really since their true, I don't want to say downfall, but where they've not been viewed as a true player, has been probably since 2015. And granted, we saw that there was a 2-year period from like 2015 to like late 2017, maybe mid 2017, but I want to say mid to late 2017, a 2-year period that it was bleak. Like, that's the lowest I've seen Xbox really ever, where they put a lot of their chips on Halo 5 to come out, be good, and multiplayer did great, and still does good to this day. It's still being played and updated regularly, but so many people, your broadest audience is going to go in there and get the campaign. Your broadest audience isn't competitive multiplayer. That's the, your subsect's going to fit in there, but the one that encompasses everyone is probably campaign, because anybody can play that. But it didn't pan out for them, and you saw less and less third-party games come out. Gears 4 was good. I really enjoyed that, but yet again, they were few and far between, and it really just showcases, putting Phil Spencer and his vision and him doubling down on gaming with Microsoft, say, no, let's change this. We're putting the player at the center of everything we do. If it isn't that case, then we're fucking moving away from it. And it's just crazy to see them at that point, going into this generation, already pretty much knowing we're fucked. Like, going to launch a console and saying, we're fucked. Like, we shot ourselves in each foot, and we're about to try to run a marathon. It's not gonna be good. But to see where they are now, just fucking announcing not that long ago the intent to fucking purchase Bethesda and have God knows how many fucking first-party studios, 23 or whatever it is now, with quality content and quality games coming out and quality first-party content and excellent services that still put the player at the front of it and excellent value. Like, it's mind-blowing. Like, and it's great to finally see some of this start to, the cream rise to the top type of thing, where it's really going to be exciting to watch this. But I'm like you, I don't think they'll ever necessarily pull out of in the console business unless they want to, unless they're like, you know what, we want to focus fully on services. Like, and that's a choice out there. Like, we're financially stable and we're making money, we're growing, but we see the trend of where games are going and it's console gaming, or it's away from console gaming. That's when I see them move away from that. Outside of that, they stay in this as long as they want. To me, at least, that I can't see them ever moving away or pulling a Sega or something. And there's talk now too. I didn't want to put it in for this week because it was kind of Phil Spencer commented on it saying, yeah, it's not accurate, yada yada. But supposedly, Xbox has been in talks to acquire one or more Japanese development studios. And a lot of people are saying, man, remember those rumors of them wanting to buy Sega?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are starting to look at that, yada yada. So point being, I don't think they'll ever be Sega because they're about to fucking potentially buy Sega. Now I'm just saying that for the hyperbolic nature of this conversation, but you get what I mean. They're not. That's all rumor and whatnot. But point being, they're in the position to grow rather than, back out. And that's so exciting. And it's so, as both of us being just long-term Xbox fans and just video game fans in general, we want to see everybody succeed. Like, because that only helps the industry grow and become better. So to me, it's only good things, whenever we see both succeed. But it's so rewarding as an Xbox fan for so long to see them find this success and be on the upward trajectory. Because just fucking imagine whenever Starfield comes out, Elder Scrolls fucking 6 comes out, like, and that's just those two. Fable, we got Avowed from Obsidian that I'm fucking ecstatic on. I'm a big RPG guy, if you can't tell. So it's these big hitters that we know, whatever the fuck the initiative's working on, all of these things, it's just wild. But yeah, I just hope that, it's one, really rewarding just to see them in the position it is, being, both of us long-term Xbox fans, and just to see, hopefully, knock on wood, them continue to have success. But it's great to see both sides, both PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, PC gaming, everyone finding success and growing in their own pathway now that, I just don't see them ever getting out of consoles unless it's fully on their own choice of, yeah, we're just the way that the games industry is going. We're moving into service based now, and that's just the way it is type of thing. Like, they're not doing that out of not being successful with their consoles, because their consoles are successful. Just last generation wasn't as successful as PlayStation, but they're still moving units. So it's going, I'm really looking forward to this generation on all fronts, but specifically to see if Microsoft really caps this redemption arc, because seeing this interview and kind of knowing how shitty of a position they were in to begin this generation, and kind of cutting out the fat and trimming and focusing in on what their messaging and seeing that kind of come full circle and come to life has been really rewarding, especially covering them now, for almost 2 years now. It's been really good to see. So, Mike, let's kick it into our last news story and topic of the day for the show this week. Take-Two announces purchase of Dirt 5 dev Codemasters. This comes from Steve Watts via GameSpot. As always, link in the description. Take-Two Interactive has officially announced an agreement to acquire Codemasters, the UK publisher behind the newly released Dirt 5. The acquisition is expected to be completed early next year. In a statement, 2K says it feels Codemasters is, quote, highly complementary with its 2K gaming label, and that Codemasters operations will benefit from Take-Two's distribution and marketing resources. It also notes that this creates a wider range of game properties, combining their sports and racing portfolios, and calls out Codemasters for having a regular release cadence to its racing games. Quote, we are exceedingly pleased to announce the recommended transaction with the board of Codemasters, said Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick in an announcement. Codemasters has a renowned history of creating some of our industry's most beloved and commercially successful racing franchises, and we believe that their offering will be highly complementary to our sports portfolio and further enhance and enhance further our organization's long-term growth. Moreover, we look forward to welcoming Codemasters senior management and development teams into our Take-Two family and sharing in our vision to deliver the highest quality entertainment experiences and aim to be the most innovative, creative, and efficient company in the industry. This follows reports last week that the two companies were in talks, which was confirmed by both. At that time, those reports gave a December 4th deadline to make an offer, so it happened well before then. Take-Two has a lot of big properties under its belt, including Rockstar's GTA and Red Dead Redemption 2, Borderlands 3, 2K Sports, and the relatively new Private Division label. Codemasters is well known for its racing games like Formula 1 games, Dirt, Grid, and Onrush. Its most recent release, Dirt 5, which is available on current-gen platforms as well as PS5 and Xbox Series X/S. So, now I'm not going to sit here, Mike, and I think you as well, and we're not going to sit here and be like, yo, we're the biggest racing fans in the world, we're the biggest Dirt fans in the world, let me tell you, we're not going to sit here and say that, but real talk, credit where credit's due, if I could figure out the fuck you say. This episode's been throwing me off, I don't know, verbally with my talking and whatnot, but credit due where credit is due, to Codemasters on really finding success of being the racing studio, at least in the third-party space. They are, to many, the go-to for, they are what is looked at as, they're the third-party gaming, or racing game guys. Like, what they put out is consistent and pushes the medium forward in terms of the racing games they put out, simulation style and whatnot. So, with that being said, though, is an acquisition necessarily the best move to make, Mike, outside of the financial stability, which is obviously fucking important? Could we see Dirt, F1, or even, a new IP that they have fall into the same laurels that we see so many 2K titles end up with, being riddled with microtransactions and just overcomplications to get in and play the fucking base game alone, different tiers that you buy in and getting to play at different times. Just so much bloat added to their games that isn't necessarily the most beneficial to the player. Could this begin to gatekeep racing fans at the third-party level?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky one, just personally, because I'll be honest.
And really, we don't even have to necessarily look at. This isn't like, right, we're using Codemasters as an example, but it really could be said for any developer who has found success being, third party, but realistically being independent for the most part. They're not, it's like a Kojima Productions, they're self-producing the games and whatnot, or a Bungie right now, they're self-producing these games and whatnot, but, it could fit in with anybody. Making this move to being purchased by a larger third-party publisher to fall into their mold, is that, does that have negative, kickbacks or whatever you want to call it compared to, keeping independent?
Yeah, I think, when you, obviously, whether it be artists that make music or movies or video games in this case, whenever you have independence from everything, you have creative freedoms where you can kind of make the call or call the shots or be the last line of defense when it comes to sometimes defending your game, defending your creative freedoms. Whenever you go into business with someone, not saying that like Take-Two's a bunch of scumbags, I don't want to, come off as saying that, but you kind of go from this freestanding entity that can defend your product to now someone's calling the shots. Now someone's telling you, hey, you guys did okay in sales, but we really need you guys to crank up those microtransactions, or we need to really crank up what people spend after purchasing the game. And, you can't really say no to them because they own you, right? And that's kind of the discussion we were having with Bethesda a few weeks ago about exclusivity, where I kind of had the sense of like, hey, man, they backed up they're backing up the money trucks and they're paying this much money. If Microsoft wants you to jump, you say how high because they own you now, type of thing. And we've both taken the stance of being pro workers' rights, but I'm pro workers' rights, but I'm also to the point where I understand a business decision's a business decision. If we were, say we got, now this would never happen, potentially, this might happen way down the road if we ever grow, and if not, I don't give a shit. But let's say we got purchased by, I don't know, like, again, not saying that this would ever happen in a million years, but let's say like Barstool acquired us. Like all of a sudden, whatever Davey Page Views wants us to do, we have to do it. We're owned. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't take me as a type, or strike me as the type of guy that's gonna really want creative control over everything. But it's the same thing as if Microsoft themselves bought us, or IGN bought us, or anyone Polygon buys us. Whoever were to buy our podcast, whoever was to buy our podcast, I should say, you know, they all of a sudden they can tell us kind of what to do. You know what I mean? So, you know, that is a legitimate concern. Is it something that Take-Two is going to really take advantage of? I hope not, because I already know what it's like to deal with a ton of microtransactions myself. I'm sure racing fans wouldn't want that, because I'm sure there are games, you know, like Forza that have that type of experience, but I'm just hoping that that's not the case, and Take-Two bought them purely because they want to make revenue off of them. You know what I mean?
Right. No, 100%. And that's what I think is so, and you brought up Bethesda as a good example. You know, what's been nice about Bethesda, from what it sounds like and what their, you know, how their acquisition with Microsoft has sounded, from everything they've said, it's more, and this is both sides saying it, of they're hands off. They're, you know, obviously checking in and doing whatever, but more so, you make the games that you want. There's a reason why we bought you, and it's because of the product you put out, and your creative visions and stuff have pushed gaming and pushed, you know, what can be done in the medium, in the genre that you do. And why would we change that? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, there's a point why they bought them, and that's what it seems like with Codemasters, them being really the racing guys. I mean, we've seen other large third-party, you know, publishers come in and do racing games very well too, to a degree. We're talking EA with Need for Speed and Burnout and whatnot, Ubisoft with The Crew, but it's for simulation-style games in the third-party genre, or in the third-party, you know, ecosystem or whatever. There's nobody who's really done it as well as Codemasters. They are the people who are good, the developers who do best simulation style racing, both with the Formula One games they put out, but specifically Dirt. Dirt is, you know, has been a staple in the racing community of gamers for decades now at this point, where it's, you think of simulation style racing, Dirt's one of the ones that come up. I mean, that style of game pushed Forza to evolve and, I'm sure, make the Horizon series. Like, that is, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, you can see that with, you know, the style of games. And like I said, we're not huge racing game people, but I mean, it's crazy to not see that as, you know, a good thing, hopefully on both sides. But I do agree. You hope it's, hey, we just see you as a value. We see you as value. We don't care how you get that value in terms of your creative vision. That's totally fine. You do what you do best, and it's going to benefit both of us, where you have financial stability long term, because Take-Two is asininely rich from Rockstar's popularity with both of its franchises that they do now, GTA and Red Dead, but specifically GTA. They're going to make money off that forever. That they provide them with financial support, plus, you know, and I'm sure this is, they did it at what, like right under 1 billion, I think was the dollar amount or something like that they came out with. But with that being said, it's like, they'll make that back no problem, you know, with other entities they have, almost like EA with how they handle their sports games and whatnot and funding other projects. So it's like, it just totally makes sense on both sides, where it's like, cool, we get the financial stability long term, plus we, you know, we get to help make them even more money, and that adds, you know, depth to their portfolio as well, having another notch in their belt for, you know, or another page within the binder of their portfolio saying, yeah, in our sports titles, we are now, you know, top tier within the racing genre, thanks to the acquisition of Codemasters as a developer under us. So it's really cool. And, but I agree that, you know, it's such a slippery slope and a thin line to kind of dance around of, you know, you look at some, you know, a few different examples. You look at a BioWare and stuff that we talked about at the top of the show, that when they were acquired by EA, you slowly saw the evolution of this being an EA title, not a BioWare title over time. That, obviously a lot of people didn't appreciate and were hesitant about. But, I think ever since the bubble kind of burst on the microtransaction end and the season pass and this and that, which you still do have, but it's not as egregious as it once was when it was introduced to people. I think we're in general, just the gaming sphere is in a much safer place with that I think it's a less slippery slope whenever you see acquisitions like that, just because there's so much money in gaming as it is already that, even if they don't make them, I'm sure they're not expecting Codemasters to like be a top selling dev in their, when you look at their catalog comparatively. So, but that's also true.
It's a niche market too.
It is.
You know what I mean?
100%. Absolutely.
It's not because they don't make good games. It's just because like who's really into that type of game. Now, I'm not like you said, we're not racing guys. We're not like NASCAR, Dale Jr. every Sunday. Like, you know what I mean? Like
100%.
And it is what it is. But we're both not the type of people that are like, I hope racing games die. So it's a niche market. It's like if there was like a cricket sports game, like who's going to play cricket sports games? Well, people from foreign countries mostly, but like that's not to say there wouldn't be a market. It's just, it's a intimate market that's small,
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's, I totally agree. I just totally agree. I think you hit the nail on the head with it, to be quite honest. So yeah, kudos to them. Kudos to Codemasters. Shout out to them for securing the bag, as the kids say. Getting out there, getting that cheddar, man. So good for them. And happy for the people who are huge racing fans. I have friends online who are diehard racing fans, Formula One fans, that I'm sure are pretty hyped about this, knowing that those games have, stability long term, that they're going to keep getting those games. So kudos to them. Mike, that being said, let's kick it over to Party Chat as we round out this week's episode, if I could say that right. Sound like Canadian. If you're new to the show, Party Chat is where we propose one question each week at the end of the show that we want to discuss. Could be as simple as, what's your favorite story beat in a game, or what have you been playing during quarantine, or even more in depth as to why the negative stigma around gaming still exists. And after answering that question ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses or email them over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, and we'll read some of those responses the following week. Last week's question: what will the difference be between sales of the Xbox Series X and S after its first month on the market? Now, we do know, obviously, we kind of just heard at the top of the show, which we've known, but it's confirmation more that it sounds like long term we're never going to truly know sales numbers on it. But I have a feeling we're going to get metrics on which sold more and which didn't. But Nick T83765 did respond, and he gave us 80% Series X and 20% Series S. And I think that's pretty much right around where we were at, Mike, last week.
Yeah.
Right around there. And I think a lot of people expect that to be at least early on in the early life of both of these consoles. So
can I interrupt you really quickly?
You can interrupt me at any point, Mike, and you know that.
I do appreciate our boy Nick T, sliding in there and letting us know what his predictions are. Mm-hmm. But, it's been a really long time since we heard from Not Spider-Man 16. Is he okay?
Calling him out.
I'm calling Not Spider-Man 16 out. Is he okay out there?
I don't know. Maybe this is the SOS for him right now, that we're calling him out. We're lighting the fire up and saying, hey, man, you got to send us a smoke signal back. Make sure you're all right. Just write in.
We're putting that message in a bottle. Okay, Guitar Hero. I'm just throwing it out there that we just haven't heard from our man in a while. And, it's getting a little lonely at the top here without Not Spider-Man coming in.
I know, right? I haven't heard from him in a while. So hopefully maybe this is the fuel to the fire to get him to wake up, like Undertaker, sit up, just, I gotta write in now. As we're gonna have like multiple responses next week being like, this is Not Spider-Man.
It's like, I know one of you bastards are him, but which one?
Yeah.
But it's almost like the Halo calling out Master Chief with Halo 4. Like, wake up, John. Wake
Right?
up, not Spider-Man, you're needed.
Yeah, exactly. I'm waiting to get that like Photoshop now sent to us at some point. So, but yes, hopefully not Spider-Man. We hear from him soon. Anyways. Before we get too off the rails here, we're so close. This week's question: do you ever see a first-party publisher, obviously talking, Microsoft in our case, but this could also apply to PlayStation, Nintendo, whoever you want to call it, having too many development studios under their wings, seeing that as a problem? Could quantity over quality come into play, and how would that look, I guess? Mike, what do you think? Do you ever see a first-party publisher like Microsoft, hardware manufacturer that has first-party studios, having too many of them and being a problem, putting out too much quantity over necessarily the quality end?
I think it would specifically depend on how how
I guess look at it as here, and I'll throw this in there while you're trying to explain this. Almost the Netflix mentality of, yeah, there's a fucking shit ton of stuff on Netflix. How much of it is good?
Right. For me, the thing I was kind of considering it, and I didn't know how to really say it, is like how many how much is Microsoft really doing for development of said games? Is Microsoft is Bethesda commingling with this, like the 343 or whatever the case may be? How many stakes in the claim, I guess, or too many chefs in the kitchen type thing, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, really. But there's a saying that has like too many swords in a fire. I forget exactly what how exactly that saying goes, but basically, like, realistically speaking, I think the only thing that would really matter is if 343 was making 800 games, but because there's so much division, I don't think you'd have to necessarily worry about it, because Microsoft isn't necessarily making these games themselves. Other studios are, and it really depends on how many games those independent studios are making at once is my thought on it.
Yeah, and I agree. It really does look at, okay, well, you kind of compare, the studio layout to Sony right now, because we're obviously, this show is Xbox oriented, so we're keeping it at Microsoft. We're focusing in on them, obviously, and especially now having 23 first party studios now after the Bethesda acquisition, that it's okay, you're starting to get to that point, not where I'm saying, oh, that's something to worry about, but
but all 23 studios aren't working on the same game, is my point.
No, exactly. And that's what is nice, where we just were talking about it, where it sounds like Bethesda is pretty much being run just as it was before. Obviously, Microsoft is going to check in. They're going to analyze their portfolio time, and they may give some suggestions, but them knowing what brought Bethesda to the dance, they're going to let them do their thing, because they know that's when they're most successful, and that's just going to be best long term for them. So, realistically, how many of those are really seeing the oversight of Microsoft? Like you're saying, how much do they have a hand in them? How much do they actually have say in that? Where, if Microsoft, their big first party studios like 343, the Coalition, stuff like that, where, they probably have a super close hand in what is going on, or oversight of what's going on, and have much more higher say. But, therein might lie if they have too many of those studios, where they have, more so they're they skip almost a management level that they report to, and have more direct contact with the higher up executives like a Phil Spencer, or Matt Booty, et cetera, that then you might see, okay, too many cooks in the kitchen type of thing, or even, hey, you're not going to be able to balance as much of this product, and it's, falling flat because of that. But I don't think, I don't see that ever really being too much of an issue, because I think at that point you would see more people be like a Bungie and have success, and okay, cool. if they're finding success on their own and they don't think they need PlayStation, they could buy their way out of that contract or something like, or they could buy their way out of that and go independent or whatever. That I feel like they would naturally transition out of that and it would solve itself. The market kind of will dictate itself on that. But I don't know. It's an interesting thought to have, because you always think, oh, there can never be too many games to play or have too many games out there, because there's always an audience for a game, no matter what kind of game it is. That you would hope that isn't the case, but I'm always a believer in, I'll take quality over quantity any day. And that's why I don't like watch a ton of Netflix, because there's not a lot of quality on there. Some of the shows, yeah, but a lot of those shows don't go past season 3 or whatever. So it's like, okay, there's just more shit on there, and it's like, okay, cool.
It'll be interesting to see if Stranger Things stays as good as it has. You know what I mean? Because
100%.
It does seem like most of the Netflix shows do have shelf lives, and that is like the expiration date, like you said, is like season 3, and Stranger Things is approaching that, and I did feel like season 3 was getting teetering that line between way too far out there, which like I know people are gonna be like, how can you ever think that show could go too far out there if you liked it at all? But like, no, season 3 was bordering, like teetering on that edge of like way too far. You know what I mean?
No. 100%.
So we'll see how they do with season 4. But I get what you're saying though.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they get with season 4, especially too, like just with specifically Stranger Things, because both of us are obviously big fans of Stranger Things, but those kids are starting to age out a little bit. Like they're going to get to a point where they're 20 some years old and they're not going to be able to, write the same storylines, which I'm sure at this point they know how much money Stranger Things makes and whatnot. Like they probably have that shit planned, or at least have a through line planned out in their head of how their narrative arc is going to go and how they'll tackle that. But I'm with you. I'm curious to see how that kind of last long term, or if we get that long term. So it'll
probably be like the movie where like you had it'll like there'll be a jump
portion of that,
to being adults or at least like teenagers. You know what I mean?
The kids portion of it, both the original TV movie and the newest one, is the best part of it. That's the most interesting part of it, the build up to the monster and what goes on with it, and obviously the whole thought process of what scares you the most as a kid. That's where it's most impactful, compared to the adult version or the adult timeline or whatever of it isn't as impactful.
Right.
But I digress. Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on the interwebs to talk about everything we talked about, whether it be the highs and lows of the Xbox Series X's launch, talking about what could have happened potentially with the Xbox brand after the Xbox One's poor start, Codemasters, all that jazz. Where can people find you on the web to talk about video games and whatnot?
You can find me at Toy Soldier, but the second O is an X, so that's TOYSXLDIER on the Bluebird app. And you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Yeah, shout out to Adam Marsh there, where the Bluebird sings, as he likes to say, lest we forget, And as always, I'm your host.
He ain't dead.
He just ain't here.
Memorial Field.
Yeah, he just ain't here right now. That's all, unfortunately. And as always, I am your host, Travis White, aka Traveless, on most internet platforms, including at Twitter, or at Traveless_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You could also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Traveless_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me over on Xbox Live, you can do so. Once I get my new fucking Xbox in, that is, you can do so over just regular Traveless on there. That's TRAVLESS. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways, like our Cyberpunk 2077 giveaway, where you can win a free copy of Cyberpunk 2077 either on Xbox or PC. and it's optimized.
It might be released in 2077.
You're eventually gonna get it one day. I'll own up to it. So
you
one
can
day,
call us out on it.
Yeah, you can call us out on it. Mike's good at that. If you owe a bet, Mike's good at like, hey man, remember whenever we bet on that 6 years ago? You owe me $50.
Don't make the bet if you don't want to pay up.
Exactly. And we're owning up. So you can check out that too as well. There's a link in our description, whether you're listening on YouTube or on audio podcast somewhere. There's a link in the description. It'll take you right to the contest. Get entered with that. So, Mike, that being said, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors. Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.